Welcome to Still Left Out in America, the podcast that is a companion to my books, Left Out in America and Still Left Out in America. And in honor of this being our very first show, we decided to go to the very finest authority on homelessness in the United States, especially children and youth and their families experiencing homelessness. And that's my dear, dear friend, Diane Nilan. Welcome, Diane.
Well, hello, Pat. Thank you so much for having me. This is
Oh.
an honor to be on your first show, and I'm just excited to think that we could just chat about the fun that we've had together.
Right. It's really important to, that's what we're going to do. We're going to reminisce a little bit, but this all came from that 17-hour marathon you participated in with us when you came through Carlisle, Pennsylvania a number of weeks ago. And we put together, I have a new book out, Priscilla, the Princess of the Park. And so we arranged with the borough of Carlisle, thank you very much, to be able to sleep out in the park and sort of dramatize the idea that this woman who has all these young children as friends and they love her and they go visit her in the park, and then eventually they realize, oh, this little old lady lives here. So we decided to go out, and then we started inviting people to be part of a webcast with us. And literally we turned about 15 people away because it was just amazing. Matthew Best, local minister who runs the parking lot ministry here in town, he helped co-host it. You helped co-host it. It was just phenomenal. It was phenomenal. And actually, Matthew will be hosting some of the Still Left Out in America episodes too coming up. So you want to watch for him. But we got so much, I think they've had more than 10,000 views now, all added together.
Whoa, whoa.
Right. So it seemed like people are really interested for the first time that I can remember. And you're in the same boat I'm in, you'll find one or two people who care about the topic, but for the most part, you're just beating on locked doors. And now it seems like probably it's COVID-19. Maybe lives have slowed down a little bit and they can pay attention better. Maybe it's fear that, for a while you didn't think you could be next because you were able to blame the homeless for their homelessness, right? You would say, oh, well, they're a drug addict or have mental illness. And by the way, I can take you to a home and show you someone who's a substance abuser or someone with mental illness. That has nothing to do with it. It's about poverty. But maybe people are now saying, whoa, they're predicting 20 to 30 million of us are going to be losing our homes in the next couple of months. And so now people are really paying attention. So now that we've got them, what are we going to tell them, Diane?
Oh, I think we could probably tell them that it's a lot more complicated than they think. And that whole mental illness addiction theory is, that's part of it in some cases, but it's so far from what really is happening to those that are homeless. And maybe we could at some point share my chart, my other stuff chart that has all of the different issues, and maybe not even all of them, but a lot of the main ones that are, that impact homelessness. And, people are going to see how close it is to them. And it's a frightening place to be. And, I hate to be a Diane Downer, but it's the kind of thing where you're going to find out there's not a lot of help out there. And so, you can think, you hear stories about, the federal government's giving a lot of help to, prevent evictions. But you start looking, I think it was New Jersey. I think it was like 17% of the people who applied for housing assistance to avoid homelessness got it. The other 83% didn't.
When I'm on the local Continuum of Care board here, which is mandated by Housing and Urban Development, if you want to be I don't apply for HUD money, but if somebody or an entity or a facility wants to apply for HUD assistance, they have to be part of a continuum of care and show that they're having an exchange of information. And if you miss so many meetings, then your applications are void for that year. But I was listening to this one, and there is now money locally here, more than $100,000 available to help people who are facing eviction. The problem is you have to prove it's COVID related. So just like they did in Paradise, California when I was out there, just like they did at Katrina, just like they've done at every natural or unnatural or god-awful disaster that happens, the population that was homeless prior to the unnatural event that has now destroyed a number of additional lives, that person who was homeless prior doesn't qualify. And I just can't think of anything more cruel than that. Can you? You know
Yes,
cruel things.
I can think of something more cruel than that, and that is a lot of the shelters that basically did business as usual before COVID. They're not taking in families or adults, single adults or youth. I mean, it's like they've closed their door to new intakes, as they call them. And you just think about the fact that everybody assumes that there's shelters out there to help people, and you used to assume that before you became homeless, and then you find out you get turned away. I don't know, that's pretty cruel.
Yeah. It's but the fact that COVID has made being homeless as much more complicated as it made being homed. Maybe a little more complicated because you couldn't stay home. When they did the stay-at-home orders, you couldn't stay home. Plus, if you were doubled up with somebody, you're not technically considered homeless by Housing and Urban Development, so you can't apply for help. However, now you've got a stay-at-home order with mom's weird boyfriend who was willing to take you all in for whatever reason. And now you're trapped in the house with this guy. Or your Uncle Fred, who really loves you dearly, but he's just getting really sick and tired of all the jelly being gone when he takes the jar out of the fridge. You've got a million reasons why hanging out with the people that you hung out with pre-COVID is not helpful after COVID. And yet now you can't apply for this new help because you have to prove it was COVID related.
Yeah, and I guess the one good thing that COVID did, it pushed a lot of people in these very vulnerable situations, pushed them out where people could see them. I mean, it's sad that they're not getting help, but it's like, whoa, where did all these people come from? And it's like, oh, they were homeless. We were trying to tell you they were homeless. Nobody was listening, and now look at them, and now it's really just a horrible thing.
So Diane and I travel the country, and many years ago we took and we redid the steps of the Joad family in the Grapes of Wrath and named ourselves the Babes of Wrath in honor of that. And so I'm going to do a really Babe of Wrathy thing right now. So if you have young children listening, you might want to turn them away. It's going to get ugly.
Run, kids, run.
You know what really frosted my cookies in this whole thing was, and I'm the most charmed person alive. Everybody's good to me, literally, with rare exception. Even people who think they're being mean to me just make me laugh, so they're still being good to me. But it wasn't until they said COVID could be found in fecal matter that that people started listening to me talking about homeless people needing toilets.
Ah.
Right? Because nobody really cared until, that guy pooping in the alley might mean I'm going to catch COVID. Now it's about me. And I hate to sound so really rotten and nasty, but that's what Babe of Wrath stands for.
Absolutely. And it's like we've been trying to convey these messages about human needs. Basically, that's all we're trying to fight for, is people having basic human needs met. And we were able to, we were being ignored just pretty much way more than we're used to. And so now it's getting real.
Yeah.
As they're saying, can I say a four-letter word?
I think so. We've made the kids leave the room.
Okay, all right. The shit's hitting the fan, and that's what's happening with COVID now. And it's people start realizing how widespread homelessness is, how many people that they didn't know were homeless are homeless. Your favorite barista, or the people in your grocery store that are schlepping the groceries out for you or whatever. And it's like, it's everywhere and it's real and we've been ignoring it. And that's another reason why this COVID issue is so much worse than it needed to be.
Right. So we've been running around and ramrodding around, and we were just going to reminisce about a couple of things that we've done, just to kind of share the love of how much fun we've had when we've been out there. And one of my favorite stories is when you gave me the phone call saying, "Did you see they're not feeding kids in, what was the name of the place? Cherry Hill, New
Cherry
Jersey?"
Hill. Yeah, yeah. Cherry
And you
Hill.
said, "Do you want to go to Cherry Hill, New Jersey and raise some hell?" And I said, "I'm waiting for you on my back steps." And off we went. That was amazing.
Well, you know, I happen to know Cherry Hill and I happen to know New Jersey kind of because I did a documentary there about how they don't nearly count the amount of kids that are experiencing homelessness in the schools. Therefore, these kids aren't getting the help that they deserve. So I wasn't trying to pick on New Jersey, but I was close and you were close, and it made sense that the two of us could team up as the Babes of Wrath and head on over there and talk to this school liaison and see what she had to say about how they're, how they counted homeless kids, how they identified them, what did they do to serve them. And I
So let's
wasn't
back up a little bit for people who don't know the terminology.
okay.
So first of all, Cherry Hill is a affluent community just outside of Philadelphia. Really, it's across the border in New Jersey, but it's not. It's a suburb of Philadelphia, and the homeless liaison is a person designated by the McKinneyVento Homeless Education Act, which is not the name of the bill, but that's what I call it. And you played a very important role in getting that bill passed. So you're intimately aware of the rules and regulations and the fact that all barriers must be removed from a child who presents as homeless at the school. And so this homeless liaison has to be in every single school district to facilitate removing those barriers. And considering you're the woman who basically wrote the bill, it makes a lot of sense when you call a homeless liaison and say, "Hey, I'd like to come visit you," that they quake in their boots. But for some reason, this woman said, "Sure, come on over." What a sucker punch that was.
I don't know why, except I think maybe she just hadn't read the memo about my involvement. So I was really happy when she said, "Yeah, sure, come on over," because I knew she didn't know what was going to hit. And I basically figured we were going to find sort of what we found. I mean, I wasn't surprised because, the research that I had done on the district, just and people that I talked to in the district that were familiar with what the district did, it's like they were like, "Yeah, Diane, yeah, they're not doing it."
So you've done this to me before. You dragged me into the mayor's office in Asheville, North Carolina, and said, "Let's go meet the mayor. We're going to talk about homelessness," not telling me that you had launched a petition against this woman and bombarded her email mailbox for weeks at a time so that when you walked in, I was the only thing between you and a good gut punch. But so then I was a little bit more nervous when we, having had the Asheville and other experiences behind me, when we go to this woman. I think part of the problem was she had so much privilege, and I don't really want to pick on her, but she had so much privilege that she couldn't imagine she had done anything, inefficiently. She was beautiful. She was slender. She had beautiful clothes and amazing jewelry, and she was a knockout. And here she was, the liaison between children experiencing homelessness and their education. And in a school district that was telling people, "You don't pay your lunch bill, you don't get any lunch." And Diane, to paraphrase for you, was there to say, "You don't adequately count the number of kids experiencing homelessness in this district. So a whole pile of those kids who haven't paid for their lunch deserve free lunch anyway, because they get it for free in the McKinneyVento Homeless Education Act. Free lunch is part of it. So when you went in to tell her that, and she didn't know what you were talking about, it
That's
was
a dead
ugly.
giveaway.
That's the only word. It was ugly.
I,
I don't
I
think I've ever seen you that angry.
well, you've missed a few times, but I have to say that it just, sometimes you just have to let people know that they really have messed up. There's no nicer way to put it. And I wasn't feeling particularly nice because literally that district has missed hundreds of kids that are homeless. And actually, what was validating and therapeutic for me was when we went over to the food pantry afterwards. And the two we don't we don't have any like real secret strategies or anything like that. We're kind of spontaneous and we're like, "Oh, there's a food pantry distribution. Oh, that's close by. Let's go." And we went and we talked when we talked to those, and it was mostly grandparents. And we would basically talk to them about, you're here for food, kind of like, what's your family makeup? And they would talk about, their son and daughter-in-law and the grandkids moved in with them when they lost their housing. So there was like that little clue about homelessness. And so we talked to them about their situation. They weren't at the food pantry because they were wealthy and trying to scam the system and get great food. They were there because they needed to make ends meet and it was hard. And so they had a homeless family doubled up with them. It could have been their
Right.
own friends or family. And you know and they, when we asked if they were counted at the school and knew about the McKinney-Vento Act and were getting any help through the school, no.
And the
That
school had
made
never done any outreach. And
Yeah.
we increased the number of identified kids experiencing homelessness by 8% in about 15 minutes.
Without trying.
It was absolutely amazing. They had 50 kids before we got to town, and 15 minutes later, they had 54. And it was like, wow, if we found 4 kids in 15 minutes at the food pantry, all that woman needed to do was leave her office and go to the food pantry every Tuesday and Thursday or whenever distribution was. And she could have also identified kids that needed her assistance in the school department. And let's face it, kids don't tell you that they're homeless. They don't
Right.
want to. They don't want anyone in their school to know. They'd rather starve. And if you're food insecure, the other thing that people don't understand when they think that there are all these benefits for people is if you don't have a rent payment, say you lose your home and you move in with your mom and your mom pays the rent and you don't make the rent payment, and then you apply for supplemental nutrition assistance, SNAP, or what people call food stamps. When you apply for that and you don't have a rent payment, you only get about $16. So here you've still got your family unit. You're still trying to make ends meet. Now you're taxing every resource at your mom or your grandmom's house, and you can't help with the food bill.
Yeah, we make it really hard. It's just, it's inexcusable. And that's why the McKinney-Vento Act is such a great tool to help the families and the youth that are in school that need the help because of homelessness. And that's what kind of gets me fired up about doing this and has kept me fired up over all these years because it's at least something that can happen. And, as you talk about the schools having to, bear the load of the increased poverty and homelessness that's happened over the years. It's not fair, but at least when you have a good homeless liaison, and there are some awesome ones out there, um, when I see what they do and then when I see what the slackers do, I kind of get a little irritated.
Yeah. It's funny because I can't blame that. We had said this at another time. I can't blame a teacher after we've heaped everything on their plate for not knowing. But teachers are really, and they're the frontline defense. And if they can become aware of the help they have with the McKinney-Vento legislation, if they can become aware which is their liaison's job. And
Right.
then they can identify that the kid needs help. The kid will get help. They won't have to pay to rent the laptop or the iPad. They won't have to pay for their lunches. You know, they can get assistance like that. And if the homeless liaisons did reach out to things like food banks, maybe the food banks would become more aware, oh, this family has extra children in the household. Maybe we can give them a little extra. You know, there are just so many things that can be done. And now with COVID-19, it's all just, I mean, your worst nightmare just went on every screen in the multiplex, you know, it's going to be everywhere. So the good news for your health and well-being is that occasionally you do get to vent your spleen like you did in New Jersey. And there've been some other times and other interesting little trips that we've taken that were a fascinating education opportunity for people to maybe. But the best thing is that if someone wants to learn more about the McKinneyVento Homeless Education Act, so-called by me, they can just go to the Hear Us website.
Absolutely. I tap into some other good organizations that have great information, because it's just me doing my website. So it's not all inclusive, but I at least like to get people pointed in the right direction and offer some good stuff on my website too. So I'm happy to entertain any visitors therein.
Yeah, so head to hearus.us, watch some of the films. Many of them, the Worn Out Welcome Mat series is phenomenal. Many of these films are extremely short. They'll take 5 minutes of your time and you'll learn a lot. The Littlest Nomads, little teeny tiny homeless kids, little babies, the cutest people. Melts our cold, flinty, nasty hearts just to think about them. But then they freeze up solid again. Anything else you want to throw in there, Diane?
Well, we probably don't have time now, but gosh, someday we're going to talk about like trips to Sheriff Joe Arpaio's office.
Yeah, let's do that one real quick. We've
Paul
got a few minutes.
Yeah.
Oh, Paul Ryan, yeah. When they called the cops on us.
Yeah.
Because we're so intimidating. Me and my teacup. And then I got a sign that says, will you help the homeless? And the cop says, that's not much of a sign. I said, really? Seriously, buddy? You're going to diss my sign?
Yeah.
You know, when he asks me for my ID and stuff, you can't do that. I'm standing on a street corner. You don't have a right to know my name. This is the way people are treated when they're thought of as homeless.
Yeah, and he wanted to search my van. I'm like, no.
And then I go in to give him our business cards because we've been contacting Paul Ryan because he was Speaker of the House and they wouldn't let us talk to him because we didn't live in Wisconsin. So we're like, but he's the Speaker of the House. We tried to find him in Washington, D.C. They wouldn't let us in. So that day I fell in the mud, remember? And the Congresswoman let me clean up in her bathroom.
Just another whole life here.
To tell them, and they're behind bulletproof glass, the people who called the cops on us. And then I leave our business card, by the way, never called. And they're on the phone saying, well, thank you. Yes, I just notified the Secret Service. They're on their way. So the state police were screaming into Janesville as you were like pedaling them out, taking us out.
I was at the speed limit though, because I knew that would be their excuse.
That's hysterical. And then Paul Ryan, of course, the congressman who so infamously pretended to wash the pans at a homeless shelter and had his children with him, teaching his children, lie if it gets you what you want.
Absolutely. Photo op is just, I was like phony, but.
So we'll save with Joe Arpaio for next time because the Paul Ryan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's a great story. We might have to do a whole half hour on Joe Arpaio.
We've got the stuff.
So thanks so much, Diane, as always. And it's a pleasure to see your beautiful face.
Oh, likewise, Pat. I'm just always delighted to visit with you.
And of course, Maxwell Parker Donnelly, the most amazing producer in the world. We got to give a shout out. This show has been produced by Maxwell Parker Donnelly, who's our tech guru's god.
Yeah, we absolutely. Without Max, we're nothing. So thank you, Max.
All right. So thanks for being on my first show, Diane.
My honor. Thank you. Be well.